3, 2, 1.
Research. Innovate.
Educate. This is RTP. This is RTP180.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2021 and RTP 180. Our topic tonight is Cleantech. I am your MC, Wade Mentor. I have been locked in the frontier since March. And in case you didn't know, they don't turn on the heat if there's only one person in here. And I was wearing a t-shirt in March when I got locked in. Not great planning on my part, but that's okay. I'm here in the frontier. As far as you know, you're at home, and we have a great lineup of guests here tonight for RTP 180. We'd like to thank our sponsors who make this all possible. RTP 180 is brought to you by RTI International. RTP 180 streaming is brought to you by Dual Boot Partners. And we'd like to give a special thank to Research Triangle Cleantech Cluster for curating our speaker lineup tonight. Thank you for their partnership in bringing you some great speakers. Now, this is how this works. We normally have 5 speakers, but it's 2021, so now we're going to do 4 speakers. They will each have about 5 minutes to speak to you on their area of expertise. After that, we will have about 5 minutes of Q&A from you, the audience, and the way we're going to do that is you're going to put it into Zoom chat. Whoa. So let's practice that right now real quick while everyone is well online. In the Zoom chat, just type in where you are right now as you're watching RTP 180. Where are you geographically? Let's make sure everyone knows how to use that Zoom chat. I'm looking this way because that's where it is on my screen. We've got Cary, Topsail, Hillsborough, Mooresville, not to be confused with Morrisville, Durham, Winston, Durham, the Bat Cave. Thank you, Batman. One thing that I am seeing that you may not see is that some of your responses are going straight to the panelists and not to everyone. We all want to see your questions. That way you know we're not making them up. So if you could go to your Zoom chat and make sure your chat is set to all panelists and attendees. Do that now while I'm talking and you won't have to do it later. So we've got somebody from Naples, Florida, Miami, Florida. I did know that Batcave, North Carolina is a real town. I also know that Batman is a real person. So set your chat to panelists and attendees. We'll all see your questions and we will have a good time. Now, if you are way too online like I am, you can connect with us during the show. We do take questions from social media. We're streaming live on Facebook as far as I know. Now, normally, you could come to a place called the Frontier, which is the area's only free co-working facility. Unfortunately, as you probably already know, Corona. So we don't go anywhere. But one day, I promise you, if we all wear our masks and get our shots, we will be back in this beautiful facility in the heart of Research Triangle Park. And you can hang out on the cool couches, look at the artwork. You can go outside. So we do things outside as well. The Frontier, one of the perks of co-working there is all of the great social activities that you get to do when we can be social again. Excuse me. We have Food Truck Fridays. There's an asterisk beside that because we have 2 more Food Truck Fridays before that program winds up. You can come to the Frontier RTP campus tomorrow from 11:30 to 1:30 and get some grub from Lee's Kitchen and the same bat time, same bat station in Batcave, North Carolina. Not really at the Frontier on January 29th for 454 Grill. And after that, other stuff will be coming. Ooh. But 2 more Food Truck Fridays. Come out to the Frontiers, get some fresh air, be out of your house for a few minutes, and enjoy the great local food trucks. All right, that's the deal. So tonight's topic is Cleantech, and we've got 4 experts in the field. Let me get things kicked off right now by introducing our first speaker of the evening. Born and raised in Mumbai, he's been here for grad school at NC State. He works for a controls engineering company called Hoffman Building Technologies. He's an expert in the field. Please welcome your first speaker, Sushant Shetgeri.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Wade, and I'm happy to be here on the show. So I'm going to talk about smart buildings and IoT today, which is the Internet of Things. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I've been passionate about since college. And it's also the reason that I joined Hoffman Building Technologies, which is the controls engineering group among Hoffman group of companies. Next slide, please. So the energy problem globally can be divided into three subparts. You got production, which is how do we produce energy in a clean way and do minimum damage to the environment. We all know how to do that today. We've got solar, we've got hydroelectric energy, we've got wind energy. The second subpart is transmission and storage. That is, how do we get energy that we produce from the source of production to the point of consumption in a way that we minimize the wastage and we can store it so that we can use it in the future. And finally, we have the problem of consumption, as in how do we consume energy in an efficient way or consume less energy so that we have to produce less to begin with. And traditionally speaking, we as humans would just produce as much energy as we need to consume. But we know that in today's world, we can't do that. And this is where the field of smart buildings and IoT come in, because it helps us optimize our energy use without compromising on comfort or safety or functionality of buildings. Next slide, please. So these are some applications of data. I just wanted to highlight how data is being used in various industries. You got banking, where it's used to reduce fraud. It's used to model credit risk. You have it in automotive industries for self-driving cars. You even have it in sports for optimizing your team performance when you have a limited budget. And of course, in construction, you have it in smart buildings and smart cities. So one may ask that why wasn't data and all these useful technologies used before if we knew about it? So there are two main reasons for this. The first is that we didn't have the knowledge base, the statistical models, the machine learning models to use this data. And secondly, more importantly, we didn't have the computing resources to analyze such large data sets in a timely manner. It's important to understand that some of these applications of data, you almost need an instantaneous processing of data, such as self-driving. If a person comes in front of a car, you need the computing system of the car to almost immediately identify that it's a person and not a piece of garbage, and signal the car to slam the brakes. Otherwise, somebody could get hurt. Similarly, in smart buildings, if a fire breaks out, you want the building management system, which is a computer, to identify that quickly and take measures so that you can put off the fire. Next slide, please. So before we get to smart buildings and smart cities, it's important to understand what a smart system is. And if I were to compare a smart building to, or maybe a smart city to a human body, I would say the smart buildings would be the tissues and the smart systems would be the cells. And just like, different cells make up different tissues, which make up, the human body, the smart systems, different types of smart systems make up a smart building. And this is what we do at Hoffman Building Technologies. If you were to ask me, what do I do? What do my team and I do day to day at my company? We spend most of our time installing these smart systems and making sure that they work in an integrated manner so that we can finally compile into the smart building. This is a very simple example of a smart system. You have three components to any smart system. You have a sensor which acquires the data. You have a computer which processes the data, and you have an actuator that performs action on what the computer tells it to do. So for example, in this case, you have an occupancy sensor, which is basically sensing any kind of motion through infrared rays. Um, let's say you have a dark room in a building, and you enter the dark room. So the sensor will sense that you have entered. It'll send a signal to the computer or the main building management system of the building and say, hey, there is a person who has entered the room, and the computer will process this data and send a command to an actuator, in this case, a light bulb, saying, please turn on the light because there's someone in there. So this is a very simple example of what a smart system is. And another example would be a thermostat on a wall. If the temperature rises, let's say to 75, and you set it to 70, your sensor would send a signal to your building management system, which will tell your HVAC system, hey, you got to put more cold air in the space to cool it down. Next slide, please. So smart systems, when integrated together and combined with the essential functions of a building, that is what makes a smart building. So we just discussed what a smart system is. What would be some examples of the essential functions of a building? You got the fire alarm or the fire system, you have lighting, you have the security system. So these smart systems can't exist independently. For example, if you have a fire system and a fire goes out, your smoke detector sends a signal to your computer, and your computer at least needs to do three things. It needs to sound the alarm so people can evacuate the building. It needs to signal your water system to activate the sprinklers, and it needs to tell your HVAC system, do not throw more air inside because you're just supplying oxygen to a fire. So you need an integration of these systems and a central computing system. That is a picture of the Duke Energy building. I would advise you guys to visit it because it's not far away, and it is one of the most well-known smart buildings in the world. It's LEED Platinum certified. It reuses water through groundwater harvesting and rainwater harvesting and HVAC condensation. It has a roof garden to minimize heat absorption during the day. And it also has smart lighting or smart blinds, which change their angle with respect to the angle of the sun so that most amount of daylight is transmitted into the building. Next slide, please. And now finally, we come to smart cities, which is just basically a scaling up of smart buildings. Similar to how you have smart systems integrated into a smart building, the integration of smart buildings with essential functions of a city, like power and water management. In this case, it would be a smart grid in case of a smart city. You have traffic optimization, where you want to minimize people spending time on the road and more time in the buildings or at work or at home. It also reduces chances of an accident, and you have security and safety, such as your burglary. So this is a quick overview of smart buildings, smart cities from the ground up, how smart systems start off and they make up a smart building, and how smart buildings make up a smart city. And conceptually, it may seem easy, but it's a lot more complex than that. But given the advancement we've had in this field and in technology over the last few years, I would say that we'll definitely see a couple of these smart cities in the near future. So with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation. I think I'm out of time, and I'll open the floor to any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Great stuff on smart cities from Sushant. I was particularly interested in the fact that you called out the smart cars, because one of the things as a technologist that amuses me to no end is that we have companies with autonomous vehicles that can drive themselves. Yet we also have, in order to submit a form on the web, you have to be able to identify the stoplights in a photo, a task only a human should be able to do. All right, so let's, that just amuses me. Let's go to our Zoom chat for a question from Jeff. Jeff asks, what is the typical cost increase of a traditional building compared to a smart building? And what is the typical ROI you get back of having that smart building?
So a smart building is a relative concept. I don't think we have a building that's perfectly smart. You know, it's not an absolute term. But if you talk about the technologies such as the smart systems, some of them are relatively cheap. Like for example, LEDs. When you use an occupancy sensor and an LED, there's an ROI of less than 5 years. But if you're talking about putting meters in your water system to measure the water, that might be a little more expensive. So it depends on the size of your facility, depends on the kind of smart systems you're using. I don't think there is a direct answer to that, but that's what it is.
Excellent. Question coming to us from Facebook Live. Caitlin asks, how many new building constructions are moving towards smart buildings versus new building constructions that do not integrate smart technologies?
So, well, at least in the last 5 years, which is when I entered the industry, I would say that most of them are moving towards the smart buildings, because just as we had the LEED certification program, where more and more private and public companies were only renting office space if the building was LEED certified, they're doing the same kind of thing for smart cities. And just working in the industry, I can tell you that most of the heavy consumers like IT clients and data centers, which consume megawatts of electricity, almost all of them are moving towards smart buildings and also a renewable energy on site to power those smart buildings.
Excellent. Question from Zoom chat from John. Are there government subsidies that can be leveraged to help fund integrations of smart systems within buildings?
So I'm not aware of a program that is funded by the government to fund a whole smart city. Unfortunately, not yet. But I do know some investment firms which are carrying out projects to turn small towns into smart cities and reap the benefits. But as you mentioned, it has to be an inclusive effort with the government and the private sector, because you have things like, as I mentioned, the water system and the traffic system. But starting off with a few small towns, I don't think is an overkill. And a few of the things that drove the solar industry in North Carolina was participation from the government and policy on tax benefits. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get some kind of incentives towards smart buildings and a smart city in the future.
All right, now our last question comes to us from both Kate and Jeff in Zoom chat. Are there any cities today that are integrating smart technologies in a way that you would point to as someone doing it well?
So I think this goes back to my last answer. There's no city as such that is incentivizing this, but a lot of private companies, like as I mentioned, Duke Energy has this Duke Energy Center. Most of the Nordic countries where they are more into cleaner energy and renewable energy, you can see a lot of these smart buildings being concentrated in those countries. And they do have more government support towards these smart buildings and renewable energy. So I would say that those countries are more likely to move towards them in the future. But as of now, there is no perfectly smart city where the government has actively encouraged or driven an effort towards that goal.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, give a big hand to our first speaker, Sushant Shetgeri.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right. Speaking of Duke Energy, segue alert. It's time to welcome our next speaker of the evening. She's a senior solutions developer at Duke Energy, focusing on new innovative solutions to help provide connected essential infrastructure. She's with us here right now. Please give a big hand to Kasey Gridley.
Good evening. Thank you, Wade. So it's a very perfect segue because Sushant was talking about indoors. So we're going to take it outdoors now and talk a little bit about smart cities from the outdoor perspective. I'm Kasey Gridley with our solutions development team at Duke Energy, and I'm actually focused on our connected communities domain. So we're very interested in how we can help solve our customers' problems through new consulting, technology, and that sort of thing. So we could go to the next slide and I'll give you some Duke Energy fast facts. So these aren't all the fast facts about Duke Energy, but I would try to pull some that were kind of more specific to what I'll be talking about today. We are, for those of you who don't know, we're an investor-owned utility, one of the biggest in the United States. We deliver electricity to about almost 8 million customers and deliver natural gas to about almost a little over 1.5 million customers in 5 states. So we have tons of infrastructure. And we have lots of poles, as you can see, lots of distribution and transmission. We have fiber, and we own and operate about 2.5 million streetlights across our service territory. And we've converted a third of those to LEDs. A lot of the cities in the Research Triangle and around this area in North Carolina have been early adopters. So it's really exciting. So as you're driving around, you'll probably see some of that technology. And on the next slide, you can kind of see we've been doing over the last years, and it will continue forever, to modernize our grid. And so we've made a lot of advances and lots of cool technology. We've installed about 1.7 million smart meters. We have converted 160 vehicles in our fleet to electric vehicles. We own about 60 drones and have about 100 licensed pilots that operate drones for our resiliency and other needs of the utility. And we've also done some microgrids recently that are now up and running and fully operable in Maryland, Massachusetts, and North Carolina. And another just cool fun fact is that we were the first wind operator to deploy this AI technology that can sort of deter eagles from getting caught in the wind turbines. So we've been we have a lot of focus on technology, a lot of focus on clean technology, and we're really excited about it. And we've made a lot of investments through our company and in the grid. But what we started to see is that there are other partners in our industry that we work with very closely that also operate infrastructure that could use this infrastructure that we are making smarter and cleaner. And there's ways that we can work together. And so on the next slide, you can see that one of the big things we see is this infrastructure convergence. And I think the biggest problem that we had last year, as you all know, was COVID-19 and the pandemic. And it very much came to light that we have an issue of digital equity throughout our country. And the utilities are making huge investments in the power grid, and the carriers and other companies are making a lot of investment in the communication infrastructure. And so if we can somehow work together and use the infrastructure, the poles, and the other tall vertical assets that we have, we could deploy both fiber, broadband, and other things a lot faster, and smart cities. And so we really feel like in order for it to be truly connected community, a truly smart city, everybody has a different definition. We really think that the first thing you need to do is establish the infrastructure in order to create your smart city. So on the next slide, you can see that everybody has their own definition of smart city. It depends on who you ask. And as you'll probably see tonight, but when we've talked to cities and our customers and others just in the community, we've seen really some common themes. And it really is all around equity, both environmental, economic, digital, making things safer, and saving money and time. And so clean technology in general, smart things can help with all of these. And we feel like we can help really integrate both the power and the connectivity to sort of make all this happen. So you can see sort of what you can end up with on the next slide. Once you build the infrastructure, you have all of your power and your connectivity and your infrastructure, then you can do a lot of smart and cool things and really establish a smart city. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you guys may have. And thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kasey.
Yeah.
All right. Get your questions in. We have a question coming in from social media. So of the things that you mentioned as part of a smart city, one of them was drones. How would a smart city use that aerial technology to help it become a smarter city?
Yeah, so we actually met with the city of Reno, Nevada, and their police department is using drone technology in order to be able to look at areas where they may not want to send folks into just yet. So they're using drones to sort of manage that. We use them to look at in storm recovery situations. So we actually have been starting to use them along with other partners that provide critical infrastructure, critical assets to help with the faster recovery, do some of the initial kind of reconnaissance to see where all of your damage is. So that's kind of what a lot of cities are talking about. We have also, I know NC State has a very cool program we learned about through RTCC, little plug, but they have a drone program that is actually looking at how in, again, disaster, times when all of the infrastructure is down, how we might be able to have 5G on a drone so that you could still have cellular communications during that time. So lots of different uses in the city space. So
great. Follow-up question on drones from Dick in Facebook chat. How would people control drones from running into each other as the technology becomes more prevalent and the airspace gets more crowded? What are ways to keep the drones from running into either yours or others?
No, that's a great question. Well, so I'm not as versed on all things drone, but I do know on our program, all of our drone pilots are licensed by the FAA. So there are protocols that they have to follow when they're flying drones. We do think that there will be more kind of laws and things that are going to be required in order to get a license for one in the future. But I think that's the best answer I have for now.
Great. Tag team question from Zoom chat from Tobian and Renita. What is a microgrid and why would you want to build one?
So it is, you would want to build one. It's basically resiliency and it's built in, it's a cleaner way to usually use, a lot of the ones we're seeing early on use solar and it's essentially creating a mini grid right there. So some of the cool things we're looking at is how can you create a microgrid for farming and for other areas that are more rural and are harder to keep online. So we're also looking at microgrids really around resiliency, backup generation, that sort of thing is kind of where they come into play. It's sort of a mini power plant in itself using distributed energy resources. So.
All right, questions keep coming. Question from Kathy in Facebook chat. How is the cybersecurity of this new digital infrastructure secured?
Well, the good thing about the cellular and LTE technology is it's very secure. So is fiber. So those are our, top two. But there are dramatic things going on in the cybersecurity space. So we have a whole group of folks that anytime we work with a partner, they go through a very rigorous process and have to meet all sorts of requirements in order for us to be able to use their software or their whatever hardware they may have as well. So, and a lot of cities actually are beefing up their cybersecurity protocols and the things they're looking at. So I've been really impressed with a lot of the CIOs around the country that we've talked to that have a focus on this. So it's, yeah, it is one of the main concerns though. Yeah.
And then our last question coming to us from Facebook chat from Parker. What is the next new smart technology that Duke Energy is exploring?
Oh, I'm trying to think of what's a cool one that I can talk about. That's a hard one. I think we are going to see the thing that I'm excited about, just frankly, you guys, it's not as cool and sexy, but I'm really excited about the way we're thinking about using infrastructure instead of building more. So if you go to an intersection and you see a pole for the traffic light, a pole for the camera, a pole for the small cell or the 5G antenna, and you see a pole for the outdoor light, that's crazy, right? So how can we get this all into one pole that does all the Swiss Army knife, if you will, but it gives us more space on the sidewalk, the right of way, and it's more aesthetically pleasing. That's what I'm excited about, even though probably not as exciting to everybody else.
Less clutter is always a good thing. That's why I try to tell my family. Ladies and gentlemen,
efficient.
big hand for Kasey Gridley.
Thank you.
And great questions, everybody. Keep them coming in Zoom chat as well as Facebook Live, because we're about to introduce our next speaker of the evening. It all started when his 4-year-old daughter saw a plastic tub of cat litter in the woods, and it's led to a global revolution. From Litterati, please welcome Jeff Kirschner.
Thanks so much, Wade. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Kirschner, and I'm the founder and CEO at Litterati. My story started on a walk in the woods with my 2 little kids. We were hiking in Oakland, and they noticed a plastic tub of cat litter lying in this creek. And they looked at me and said, "Daddy, that doesn't go there." And that was an eye-opening moment for me, because it reminded me of when I was a kid. I used to go to summer camp. And on the morning of visiting day, just before they'd let our parents come barreling through the gates, the camp director would say, "Quick, everybody go pick up 5 pieces of litter." Well, when you get a couple hundred kids, each picking up 5 pieces, it doesn't take long before you have an absolutely spotless camp. So I thought, why not apply that crowdsourced model to the entire planet? And that was the inspiration for starting Litterati. What happened next was a little bit odd. I photographed this cigarette butt using Instagram. I'd love to tell you that there was a big idea at the time, or that there was a rhyme or a reason. The truth is there wasn't. I just did it. And then I took another photograph and another photograph. And I noticed 2 things happening to me. The first was litter became artistic and therefore approachable. The second thing was, at the end of a week, I had 50 or 60 photos on my phone, and I had picked up and properly discarded or recycled every single piece I photographed. And I realized that the same way people are measuring the steps they walk, the miles they ride, I'm measuring the positive impact I'm having on the planet. I didn't really have an idea of what I could do with that, but I just thought it was really cool. And what I noticed from there was, I'm consuming a ton of stuff. We as a society are just consuming a ton of stuff. And as a result, we're producing a ton of material. Unfortunately, our waste infrastructure is completely inadequate. And as a result, tons of stuff is flowing out into the environment. To be more specific, 32% of all waste, stuff that's meant to go into a landfill or recycling bin, ends up on our beaches, our streets, and eventually the oceans. The result is that it is polluting our beaches. It's killing wildlife. And unfortunately, it's poisoning our food system. So you might ask the question, well, who's responsible for all this? And what's currently happening is that everybody's blaming everyone else. But there's one group that bears the cost, and it's cities. Cities are spending an enormous amount of money every year. And even with all of that money, the billions that's spent, they can't keep up. The problem is that they're spending that money reactively. We're like hamsters running on a wheel, constantly cleaning up, cleaning up, cleaning up. We need to look at the root cause of the problem. We need to look underneath the problem to truly understand how to solve it. Problem with the current solutions is that they are inefficient, expensive, antiquated, and completely unengaging. Well, at Litterati, we think that there's a much better way where anybody can be part of the solution. Armed with a mobile application that is simple yet sophisticated. Simple in that you snap a photograph, and that photograph tells us who picked up what, where and when. And we use computer vision models to identify every object, material, and brand. Why? So that a city can diagnose its problem properly, while at the same time incentivizing, recognizing, and rewarding the individuals that are contributing to a cleaner community, all so that cities can spend smarter. There's no reason to be wasting all of this money. And what began with me picking up a single cigarette has now turned into a community that's picked up almost 9 million pieces in 185 countries, and we're growing quickly. And all of that data has really been used to create change. We've informed policy, inspired smarter packaging, and even personal responsibility. Let me give you 3 examples. In San Francisco, our data was used to generate $4 million in annual tax revenue just by understanding the percentage of cigarette litter. In Holland, our community collected 30,000 of these plastic fireworks. And as a result, the manufacturer changed the packaging so they're no longer made out of plastic. Now they're made out of paper. And in Modesto, California, a group of 5th graders identified that the most common type of litter on their campus were the plastic straw wrappers from their own cafeteria. So they asked their principal, why are we even buying straws? And they stopped. And yet we're just at the beginning. When millions of people all over the world come together to solve our biggest environmental problems, anything is possible. Thank you so much.
All right, great stuff from Jeff and Litterati. You know, for me, I ask myself all the time, is it necessary for me to eat a spoon of plastic every day? It's not, but it's sterile, and I like the taste. Now let's come to you in the audience for questions about the litter world that we live in. First question coming in from social media. Who really gets the incentive to fund this sort of program? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the municipality? Is it NGOs? Kind of how does that partnership work?
It's a great question. So we offer a subscription-based platform with all of those types of customers. We work with NGOs like the WWF. We work with cities actually like Wake County and Raleigh. We work with corporations who do everything from team building programs to sponsorships. But what we've learned is that cities are the ones that feel the pain because they're the ones that are truly paying for this. And so commercially, where we're focused is providing cities with this platform that not only engages their citizens, but also gets them this granular level of data that up until now they just haven't had.
Excellent. Question from Tom in Zoom chat. How good are recycling plans from cities reusing waste materials? We recycle all these things. How good are they at actually reusing them?
Tom, that's an outstanding question. And I can't admit to knowing a ton about the recycling plans that cities have. What I can tell you is that they are completely different in every city you go to, right? So I recently moved to the Triangle, and I was living in the Bay Area for quite some time. And I lived in Berkeley and Oakland, which are neighboring towns. Their recycling systems are totally different. The bin colors aren't even the same. And so what you have is this really fragmented set of solutions. Some cities are a lot better than others. Some cities in places like Bangalore don't even have infrastructure in place necessarily. So this is a complex, universal, massive problem. And we recognize that we're trying to take a big swing to solve it. And it certainly isn't going to be easy.
Question from Ranita in Zoom chat. You showed how you could take pictures of individual pieces of litter to identify it. How do you capture photographs and identify larger swaths of areas like a roadside?
Ranita, that's another great question. So initially when Litterati started, it was one piece per photo. That was all we had the capability of doing. We have just released in beta what we call multi-piece per photo. And we are now testing the ability to capture, dozens, we're not at hundreds yet, but dozens of pieces within one photograph. As we continue to build out the technology, ultimately, we think we'll get to a place where you can capture an entire pile, and using what are called bounding boxes, you can go in and granularly at the pixel level create a box around each and every piece, and then apply the machine learning models to extract what is that object, what is it made out of, if possible, identify the brand. So that's exactly where we're headed.
Question from Caitlin in Facebook Live. Have you been able to identify the most frequently littered items or brands, and does that vary by geography?
Caitlin, we have, and it absolutely does. So on the material side, we break everything into object, material, and brand. Object, it's going to be things like cigarettes, bottle caps, bottles, cans, things you might imagine. On the material side, plastic is far and away the item that is found the most often, but you have to remember that plastic is found in things like cigarettes, which up until starting Litterati, I didn't even know that. When it comes to brands, it's a lot of the brands that you would probably think about: Starbucks, McDonald's, Red Bull, Marlboro, etc. But I'll give you an example of where it can be different depending on location. So in San Francisco, we have a coffee chain called Peet's. There's quite a few Peet's cups, lids, sleeves on the ground. In Toronto, you don't have Peet's. What you have is Tim Hortons. And so there's a ton of Tim Hortons cups, sleeves, and lids on the ground. You go overseas and it's a whole group of brands that, you know, we may not be familiar with here in the States. So absolutely, it differs by geography, which is one of the things that we find to be incredibly fascinating.
Question from Facebook Live from Prahalad. Do cities and counties release this data about litter that they're collecting through your app publicly?
Prahala, our data is open. You can actually go to litterati.org and you'll see the open database there. So the answer is yes. We have done some projects where cities said, hey, we're not just cities, all sorts of partners where they've said, let's get a baseline of data and we'd like to not put it into the open yet. And we'll respect that wish, but our data is completely open.
And last question comes to us from Jeff in Zoom chat. Your daughters inspired you to start this. How are they helping you now?
They're not, they're done. No, I'm kidding, Jeff. I'll tell you what they do. They remind me of why. They remind me of why I get up every day to pursue a seemingly impossible goal to reach. Because, you know, as a startup founder, things get tough all the time. And if you don't have that why really close by, it only makes the tough times that much tougher. I guess what I'd end with is I've learned through my children and through Litterati that, you know, it's one thing to get up for a paycheck, but it's a hell of a lot easier to get up for a paycheck and a purpose.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's your friend and mine. He's saving the planet. Please give it up for Jeff Kirschner. That's good stuff. I highly encourage you to check his stuff out. I've been friends with Jeff for a couple years now, seen what he's done, and it's fascinating. So please check that out. But now we are moving on to our final speaker of the evening. He's served in local government agencies throughout his entire career, from the public sector to the private sector. Please welcome Andy Honeycutt.
Well, thank you, Wade. Great to be with the group tonight. Have to thank the platform to share information, also to the Research Triangle Cleantech cluster for providing content and rolling in the speakers, and I'm glad to be a part of that. Amanda, great job in shepherding the process with Boxyard RTP, so we appreciate that as well. Well, you're about to spend 5 minutes or so of the exciting world of meters. And quite frankly, often you don't hear exciting and meters in the same sentence, but I did use that on purpose. Now, the way we got into metering was kind of a strange evolution. Meters historically in local government have been forgotten assets. They're assets that you buy it, you install it, and you forget it. But quite frankly, whether it's gas, water, or electric, you're billing off of the information off that little device. And so my colleague here is very excited about her meter. We've got a lot of folks really passionate in our organization about metering, but that's just not enough. And so we'll talk a bit about how smart meters are changing the topology of technology and changing the way our clients do business. Smart meters do mean more money. The more accurate they are, the better revenues are coming in. It creates efficiency in the organization. Automate the things you can automate so that you take your people, your talent, and put them on things that have to be done manually. And it gives you more options. Let's talk about distribution operations, either electric or water. Let's think about all the creative information that I can get from a simple smart meter, like a leak behind the meter or pressure and so forth. So it's really an exciting time to be in the industry. And you've heard a lot from the very bright speakers ahead of me about what's happening in smart cities. And I'm going to talk a bit about our piece of that topology, being that full system integrator from device to network to application. All right. So let me introduce you to a bit about our company, MeterSYS. It stands for Meter Systems, and it should be very descriptive to what we focus on each and every day and why we're passionate. We are based in Raleigh, but we do work across the country and services and accounts nationwide. We stay vendor neutral. We think that's critically important to always represent the interest of the municipality, the public agency, the public utility. And so we're always looking after their interest in that vendor neutral environment. I believe we're an industry leading consultant in smart solutions when you balance AMI and smart city applications. We've gotten very innovative, I believe, here in Raleigh by creating testing labs and testing applications for devices that are rolling out of manufacturers to make sure that they do make sense for our clients. They're going to be sustainable and reliable. And we support water, electric, and gas utilities in that vein. And we are also weirdly passionate about metering technologies because there's so much involved in this industry. Folks often just don't understand what we do. And so it's a great opportunity tonight to be able to share a little bit more about what we do, why we do it, and how we do it in building that smart city environment. So technology is great, but it's really the people that drive success, and we've got a fantastic group. We have a flawless team of professionals that operate and do a fantastic job, and they come from a diverse background, diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, and they bring a lot of that diversity to the table when we're serving our customers. And we have a really good office dog. That office dog creates a lot of opportunities for excitement and support, but also sheds a lot. So our cleaning services group certainly reflects that in their monthly billing. But we need that type of innovation and that kind of fun to be creative and to be innovative in smart cities because it is so new and cutting edge and dynamic. It is not one size fits all. It is very customizable to our clients, and we have to be building that roadmap when we're delivering. So we've got folks that have been in dental hygiene. We've got folks that have been in the US military, whether it's Air Force or Army. And those are all folks that have had those perspectives that help us characterize and qualify the work that we do for our clients. With people, we are delivering solutions for our folks. And a lot of my colleagues before have talked about the devices and the applications and smart buildings and smart infrastructure. I'm going to talk a little bit about smart networks. And so the smart network really is, next slide, please. The smart network really is critical, and it's the backbone to our services to our customers. When we have devices and we have applications, but we can't make those two arenas talk, we have to have that reliable network. And so we look at things like cellular and proprietary fixed base, which is an RF, and looking at IoT network solutions like LTE-M and LoRaWAN. We actually have a LoRaWAN network down in Sanford. They're doing a fantastic job. And I'm excited to say that RTP's neighbor in Sanford is going to be one of the leaders in smart city deployment. We've got water meters, we have parking meters, we have distribution sensors. All of these things are under one network, one umbrella, and we're managing that data under one platform. And so I will say that there are a lot of communities in North Carolina that are really looking at how to innovate using AMI as that backbone. So the possibilities are endless. And the total cost of ownership is lowered when putting more devices onto that network. Next slide, please. So device growth has been exponential. And here's Gartner's show of just the last 3 years. And it has been remarkable and will continue to be remarkable as we move forward. And it, again, is exponential. Worldwide spending on the IoT is forecast to reach $745 billion at the end of 2019, and the numbers are still coming in, and that's an increase of 15.4% over 18. So we're seeing dynamic growth, and as this industry matures, we're going to see that growth continuing to be strong. So why now for IoT? IoT in sensors, next slide, please. The cost of those sensors are falling, performance is rising. We want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge, but not the bleeding edge in terms of device performance, so that sustainability is there, and that those devices are going to give us that ROI that we expect. New wireless technologies are coming out every day with better batteries and lower communication cost. And so analytics allow us to look at that device level data in a much more broad perspective and make us smarter about the decisions we make in our own operations. Next slide, please. So we do believe that there's a very definable intersection of AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, and IoT. The use cases are expanding, and the departments beyond utilities are being engaged in this decision and in this implementation, and we are going to solve problems through that automation process. Next slide. So at the end of the day, we love smart dogs and we love smart meters. It is a great industry to be in. There's a lot of dynamic activity happening. We appreciate our friends at Duke for some of the attachments we've made in regional smart city deployments, and we look forward to what the future holds in this industry. Thank you.
All right, great stuff there from Andy Honeycutt. We're coming to you in chat for questions. First question coming in from social media. You mentioned Sanford as a city that is investing in this technology. What other cities that people might not necessarily think of are doing really innovative things in smart city and smart meter technology?
Great question. A couple come to mind. Kansas City, a leader in innovation for many years, and we've partnered with the former innovation officer there in Kansas City on doing some creative things out west. In California, a lot of conservation measures are being driven, so smart applications are being driven there. And so we're doing actually a roadmap planning project with Oceanside, California, another strong innovator in smart cities. And I mentioned Sanford as well. Cary has been an anchor in smart cities for many years.
Question coming in from Zoom chat from Jeff. How does one monitor or meter agricultural operations?
We do have agriculture sensors, soil sensors that are used in agriculture and in defense of irrigation or in support of irrigation through percentage of moisture content within soils. So there's a lot of intelligence that's been being driven up through very low cost sensors.
All right, next question coming in from Tom in Zoom chat. Do you also have metering for micro utilities, so metering tenants inside of a building who all feed from a primary utility, doing that micro metering at the individual tenant level?
Sub-metering is very, very common, and sub-metering is emerging into smart applications. We do have a partner from out west that we have started a testing environment with for sub-metering. The dynamics of that device are a little bit different than the utility-based metering, but the concepts are the same. Extract data, get it onto a network, and then use that data in an application that makes sense.
Question coming in from social media. How has the cost curve of sensors changed over the last 5 to 10 years in terms of becoming more affordable and thus more able to be placed into smart devices?
Great question. And we have seen device cost go down. I'm not going to be able to necessarily specifically answer the question of cost curve, but I can tell you that the devices that we are seeing in second and third generations as defense against the environmental contaminants and better battery construction and improved network transactions, lowering that demand on that device for transactions, all creates a higher performing, lower cost device.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, give a big hand to Andy Honeycutt. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you, Wade.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our live stream of RTP 180 Cleantech. Now, a question for you. Are you an artist? I'm not, but you may be. Or do you know an artist? If so, there's an RFP for an outdoor mural at the Boxyard, our new innovative outdoor facility at RTP's Frontier. That RFP is live through February 4th. Head over to the Boxyard website at rtp.org to find out more details on what we're looking for in terms of murals and the compensation should you be selected. You may be entitled to compensation from Liberty Medical. I don't know. Next month, February, our topic will be equity. We'll be having speakers tell us about how to build a more equitable society. It'll be right here. Again, same bat time, same bat station, same people from Bat Cave, North Carolina, 6 p.m. on February 18th. That should be something you'll want to attend. On behalf of RTP 180, presented by RTI International, I have been your MC, Wade Minter, saying thank you for joining us again virtually. Someone please come let me out of the Frontier. It's getting very cold in here. Wear your mask, get your shots. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.